Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. Have you ever wondered what it truly takes for a single company to become, well, indispensable to the entire global economy? And what happens when that very company, facing immense geopolitical pressure, attempts to shift its entire global footprint? Today we're taking a closer look at the fascinating story of TSMC, the world's largest chip maker. Its name might not be on, say, your toaster, but its products are absolutely everywhere. We'll be looking beyond the headlines using a recent article from The Economist as our starting point to understand the true complexities, the challenges of its ambitious global expansion. Our aim here is really to unpack the critical nuances of TSMC's journey and, figure out what's really at stake for all of us. For years, TSMC just quietly grew into this giant, this manufacturing powerhouse that honestly most people outside the tech world hadn't even heard of, but now. It's not just a company, it's a strategic linchpin for global technology, a really big deal. We're talking about a firm that produces something like 2/3 of all chips made by foundries, those specialized companies that just manufacture semiconductors designed by others. And get this, in the most advanced segments, its share actually exceeds 90%. Just think about that for a moment. Almost all AI accelerators, the sophisticated chips powering the current AI boom, made by TSMC. Giants like NVIDIA, now one of the world's most valuable companies, and its rival AMD, they rely entirely on TSMC. It's really no wonder that locals in Taiwan sometimes call it the sacred mountain that protects the country.
It is quite remarkable, isn't it, how they achieved this position? Their founder, Morris Chang, made a truly contrarian bet back in 1987, a real gamble at the time. Instead of designing and producing chips like Intel did, he decided, no, we'll focus solely on manufacturing. This established the pure-play foundry model, and it utterly transformed the industry. By concentrating all their resources on just perfecting manufacturing processes, they created capabilities others simply couldn't match. And because they served many different customers, they achieved these incredible economies of scale, which drove down costs and really made it possible for fabless firms, companies like NVIDIA, that design chips but don't build them to even exist.
Right. So they enabled that whole ecosystem.
Exactly. Their discipline is, as one CEO famously put it, unbelievable. They achieve exceptionally high yields. That's the percentage of working chips you get off a silicon wafer. And they've mastered replicating improvements across all their factories, their fabs, all while maintaining an astonishing net profit margin of around 40%.
40%?
Yeah. It's a testament to their rigorous engineering and, frankly, relentless operational excellence.
A phenomenal success story, no doubt, but one that's now deeply shadowed by, geopolitics. The Economist article rightly highlights TSMC's move to build new factories abroad, particularly the 6 leading-edge facilities planned for Arizona. Now, it seems intuitive, doesn't it, that having more production capacity outside Taiwan would inherently reduce risk. But is merely building these wafer fabs, the front-end production, is that really the whole story of de-risking the supply chain? Or is there more to it?
That's a really crucial distinction, and it's where the Economist article, while very good, maybe puts a bit too much emphasis just on the front-end fabrication. What's often overlooked, and what has actually been a key bottleneck recently, is advanced packaging. Those cutting-edge processes like CoAS, chip-on-wafer on substrate, and SOIC system on integrated chips. These are ways to stack and integrate chips really tightly.
Okay, so packaging is more than just putting in a box.
Oh, much more. It's highly sophisticated. And these processes, along with other critical materials, are overwhelmingly concentrated in Taiwan. Right. Consider this. Through 2024, chips fabricated in the U.S., say in Arizona, often had to be flown back to Taiwan just for this advanced packaging step.
Really? Back to Taiwan?
Yes. So, a wafer made in Phoenix that still has to return to Hsinchu. Well, that hasn't truly de-risked the supply chain, has it? That critical part of the value chain still sits squarely on the island.
So we're talking about more than just where the silicon gets etched. It's the whole journey. That's a truly critical point. Front-end fabs are just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. So if Arizona's new 4-nanometer production isn't the complete de-risking story, what does that mean for the U.S. and its big push to secure its own chip supply chain?
Well, the crucial point, I think, is that we really need to judge resilience by looking at the complete value chains, the whole thing. That means from front-end fabrication through things like high-bandwidth memory HBM, which is essential for AI, then interposers, those tiny silicon bridges connecting chips, then CoWoS packaging, testing, and finally module and data center integration, not just counting the number of fabs.
Right, the whole end-to-end process.
Exactly. The good news, though, is that the U.S. has started to recognize this gap and plug it. Companies like Amcor, for example, recently won about $407 million to build a big advanced packaging plant near Phoenix, and TSMC itself is a partner in that.
Ah, interesting. So they're co-locating, essentially.
Precisely. And that kind of investment is just as strategically vital as the new wafer fabs. It's only just beginning to ramp up, but it shows a more holistic understanding of the problem is developing.
Okay, so we've talked about the technical side, the infrastructure hurdles. But the Economist article also touches on something maybe harder to move. TSMC's unique manufacturing discipline, its intense work culture. They call it the TSMC heartbeat, right? And there are stories like the Nightingale program, which sounds less like a lullaby and more like round-the-clock engineering shifts.
Something like that, yes.
Mr. Chang himself, the founder, have apparently maintained that transplanting this work ethic would be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So does that mean there's sort of a built-in ceiling on the quality you can expect from chips made abroad? Or are we missing something here too?
That's a great question because it's a common concern. Despite those very real cultural differences and all the anecdotes, the most concrete data point we actually have suggests otherwise. Yields in Arizona on the first wave of 4-nanometer production are reportedly comparable to Taiwan's.
Comparable, really? After all the talk about difficulties?
Apparently so. Now, this didn't just happen automatically. It came after a pretty significant training effort. Hundreds of U.S. engineers spent like 12 to 18 months training in Tainan at TSMC's main facility. And similarly, Taiwanese veterans were embedded in Arizona to help launch things.
Okay, so a massive knowledge transfer effort.
A huge one. It suggests that TSMC can actually replicate its system. It takes time, training, the right tools, even if local norms around overtime or, dealing with unions are different. So while you should definitely expect slower ramps, things taking longer to get up to full speed and certainly higher costs abroad, it doesn't necessarily mean a fundamental compromise on quality. It kind of challenges that assumption that their secret sauce is purely cultural.
That's a really powerful point about the yields in Arizona. It does challenge some long-held assumptions, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned higher costs. Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, she estimates U.S.-made wafers carry about a 15–20% cost premium compared to Taiwan.
That's the number often cited, yes.
So resilience definitely comes with a price tag.
It absolutely does.
But beyond costs and these, let's say, cultural transplant challenges, what other big constraints does TSMC face back home in Taiwan? What else is pushing them to look beyond Taiwan?
Right, because it's not just geopolitics driving this. There are fundamental issues like power and infrastructure. Taiwan's looming power constraints and also land constraints are really becoming first-order limits. There was analysis cited by S&P suggesting TSMC used roughly 8% of Taiwan's total power in 2023.
8%, just one company.
Yes. And it could approach something like 24% by 2030 if current trends continue.
Wow, nearly a quarter of the island's power.
It's a breathtaking rise. It basically forces either a massive expansion of the grid with all the questions about energy sources that raises, or inevitably putting more capacity somewhere else, abroad. Plus, Taiwan has a very low fertility rate, which tightens the future pipeline for skilled engineers. Competition for talent is getting fiercer, so this whole beyond Taiwan question, it's as much an industrial ecology problem as it is a security one.
Industrial ecology, that's an interesting way to put it.
Meaning, even if the world were perfectly peaceful, Taiwan might struggle to physically host all of TSMC's future advanced chipmaking without huge infrastructure upgrades, especially for power.
So it's not just political pressure from, say, the U.S. It's also these very real, practical resource limits. Now, the article describes U.S. political pressure as sort of a background force influencing TSMC's expansion. But how much has the state, specifically the U.S. government, actually moved into the foundry business itself? Is it just subsidies, or is it more active than that?
Well, this is where things get really interesting and potentially complicated. Policy risk isn't just external anymore. It's becoming internal to the strategy. Washington isn't just handing out checks like the $6.6 billion Chichisas Act award for TSMC in Arizona. It's actively trying to steer the industry. For instance, the government took a stake, I think around 6% equity in Intel back in August 2025. And there's even been exploration really, of pushing for a TSMC-Intel collaboration.
Collaboration between rivals.
Pushed by the government. Exactly. That active steering raises a whole new kind of risk, policy-induced misallocation. That means things like potentially overbuilding capacity in one specific place because of subsidies, or maybe pressuring commercial tie-ups that wouldn't naturally happen, which could, down the line, distort prices and technology roadmaps for everyone.
Policy-induced misallocation. That sounds like something economists worry about.
It is. So TSMC's massive capital spending plans now have to factor in not just the usual semiconductor cycles like the AI boom, but also the risks and shifts in U.S. industrial policy. It adds another layer of uncertainty.
A whole new variable in their planning.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift to the demand side for a moment. The AI boom has obviously been incredible fuel for TSMC's growth. It's now, the 11th most valuable company globally. But the Economist article only briefly mentions the risks of demand concentration. How big a factor is that for you, the listener, trying to understand TSMC's future stability?
It's crucial because concentration risk isn't just about geography, Taiwan risk. It's also customer mix risk. Right now, AI accelerators absolutely dominate the demand for leading-edge chips. And that demand is highly tied to just a handful of very large buyers, the hyperscalers, the big cloud companies.
Like Google, Amazon, Microsoft.
Precisely. If their spending on AI infrastructure were to pause, or even just slow down significantly, the risk of overbuilding capacity becomes very real. Especially since TSMC's capital expenditure is at record levels projected somewhere between $38 billion and $42 billion for 2025 alone. That's huge investment.
A massive bet on continued AI growth.
A massive bet. And you see rivals trying to chip away at that dominance. There was that recent deal reportedly worth $16.5 billion between Samsung and Tesla. That shows competitors are actively trying to win back major customers, which could eventually lead to more pricing pressure.
So things to watch are the spending plans of those big tech companies.
Definitely watch the capital expenditure of the hyperscalers, but also look at TSMC's customer mix. Are they getting big wins in other areas beyond just AI GPUs? Like automotive chips or edge computing? Diversification is key to managing that cycle risk.
Right. Okay, let's talk about the silicon shield. For years, this idea has been around the theory that China wouldn't attack Taiwan, partly because it needs TSMC's advanced chips so badly. How does this global expansion, this whole effort to build fabs elsewhere, affect that delicate balance? Does it weaken Taiwan's strategic indispensability?
It's a fascinating dynamic. The diversification, which, let's be honest, is largely being driven by policy in the US, Europe, and Japan, it naturally erodes Taiwan's unique indispensability premium. It has to. Also, the export controls put in place by the US and the Netherlands have already kind of blunted China's theoretical ability to just take over a fab and run it. They wouldn't easily get the necessary advanced tools from companies like ASML, the Dutch firm that makes the critical lithography machines needed for cutting-edge chips.
Right, you can't run the fab without the machines and the know-how.
Exactly. So as more advanced manufacturing capacity and that crucial advanced packaging move off the island, Taiwan's leverage will inevitably shift. Now, it will still be incredibly important, don't get me wrong, but its position might move from we host practically everything cutting edge to something more like we host the absolute frontier, the next big thing, plus a really deep cluster of suppliers. The Economist article frames this as a delicate balancing act, which it certainly is for TSMC and Taiwan. But, a slightly harder read might be that diversification is the explicit goal of allied policy. And it will, by design, dilute that silicon shield concept over time. Reducing reliance on that single point is the whole idea for many countries.
So it's less an unintended consequence and more the intended outcome of policy elsewhere.
Arguably, yes.
Okay, so for you, the listener, wanting to really track whether TSMC is actually getting beyond Taiwan in a meaningful way, what should we be watching? What are the real signals beyond just counting new factories?
Right. What are the key indicators? I'd say you need to watch 5 main things. First is advanced packaging, the really complex stuff like CoWoS actually coming on shore in places like the US and hitting significant volume, not just pilot lines, but real volume production.
Okay, packaging volume, what's second?
Second, what's the actual node mix being produced in Arizona? Will the next generation A16 node, that's TSMC's future tech, genuinely go into high-volume manufacturing on U.S. soil by, say, the end of the decade? Or will the U.S. fabs consistently be a generation or so behind Taiwan?
Got it. Node advancement outside Taiwan.
Third, keep an eye on Taiwan's own grid build-out. Does their power generation capacity actually keep pace with the enormous demands of the N2 and N1.4 nodes, their most advanced processes coming online? Or do power constraints start forcing more capacity abroad regardless of geopolitics?
Power in Taiwan itself.
Fourth, watch for those policy interventions we talked about. What are the terms attached to funding for rivals like Intel? Are there any signs of government-pressured tie-ups or collaborations between competitors? That tells you about the level of state steering.
Policy moves. And finally, fifth,
keep an eye on customer diversification. Is TSMC managing to broaden its base beyond just that handful of huge AI buyers? Are they locking in more automotive, industrial, or other customers for their advanced nodes?
Right, spreading the customer risk.
Exactly. Those 5 things, packaging volume abroad, node advancement abroad, Taiwan's power grid, policy interventions, and customer diversification, those will be the true signals of how successful this monumental and very expensive undertaking really is.
This whole journey into TSMC's global expansion, it's clearly far more complex than just building some new factories overseas. It's a really high-stakes gamble on replicating a unique culture, navigating these huge infrastructure challenges, responding to powerful government pressures, and balancing market risks, all while fundamentally reshaping its own strategic importance on the global stage. It's a reminder, isn't it, that even in the super technical world of semiconductors, it often comes down to people, politics, and power.
The implications are just vast. It's not just about where the next iPhone chip or AI processor gets made. It's about how resilient our global supply chains truly become. And it's about how critical industrial policy is now shaping the future landscape of the world's most advanced, most foundational technologies. It really reminds us that to truly understand a global giant like TSMC, you have to look beyond the obvious headlines, dig into the details, and consider all those unseen forces that are defining its future path.
Thanks for listening. Follow us to stay updated with the latest insights on The Economist every day. And don't forget to like, comment, and share.